One thing is certain, animated villains are all fascinating, and in some way some become fan favorites, while others are despised for their actions or personalities. Here's a ranking of the most loved and most hated villains. Starting with a villain who, despite his initially evil intentions, won the hearts of many and generated an undeniable affection among fans. Gru, from Despicable Me. This supervillain, with his pointy nose, black trench coat, and an army of minions, is no ordinary villain. He embodies boundless ambition that, paradoxically, turns into the purest form of fatherhood. His presence is felt right from the start, grand and comedic, but with a subtle layer of loneliness beneath it all. After a series of small crimes, Gru is offended to discover that another villain, Vector, has stolen the Great Pyramid of Giza, which wounds his pride as the world's greatest villain.
What? What happened?
It's all over the news. Some fella just stole a pyramid. They're saying he makes all other villains look lame.
Among the crowd of smaller villains, Gru rises quickly, watching the success of others with disdain. A mere glimpse that, for the more attentive, is already a foreshadowing of an even bigger plan. An ambition that at first may seem like just a bruised ego, but that carries the weight of an unexpected fate. The true charm begins when Gru, in pursuit of committing the greatest crime in history, stealing the moon, needs a shrink ray, a rocket, and financing. He approaches a villain bank but is turned down, leading him to steal the shrink ray from a research base. In the midst of this elaborate plan, Gru adopts 3 orphan girls, Margot, Edith, and Agnes, as part of his scheme, using them to infiltrate Vector's base.
Light bulb.
At first he sees them as mere tools, not family, but what truly warms the heart is his journey of transformation, a melody of affection that becomes synonymous with humor and admiration. With the arrival of the girls, the supervillain is forced to confront himself. During their time together, he's touched by their unconditional love, and for the first time, the legendary Gru feels true affection. This trauma is so deep that it makes him reconsider his priorities, trying to hide from his old identity as an unrelenting villain. Later, in his secret fortress, Gru finds himself alone, but now with the girls by his side. There, he is confronted by the reflections of his lonely, selfish life. It's in this moment of vulnerability that Gru reveals his redemptive glory. I'm not just a supervillain. I'm a father, and I came for you. The revelation is touching. And Gru, now ready to face his destiny as a father, fights desperately, showing his vulnerability in the face of the inevitable need to love. The final confrontation takes place on Vector's ship, where the girls have been kidnapped. During the chaotic battle, Gru, with his newfound cunning and love, faces Vector, isolating him from everyone. He pressures him, not just physically but psychologically, to release the girls. The duel is intense, a dance of gadgets and emotions where Gru fights with fear but also with a fierce new determination. For the first time, he doesn't run. He embraces the responsibility of being a real father, accepting his fate but fighting for his daughters with renewed value.
Margot, I will catch you, and I will never let you go again.
When Gru, in a moment of pure courage and wisdom, disarms Vector and shows that he now values his family and the friendships he's made, he recognizes the profound change in himself. Gru, though frustrated that his villainous career is ruined, retreats from his evil plans, uttering words that echo in the minds of fans. I'm a father. And so he disappears as a villain, leaving behind a transformed Gru and an audience in awe of the complexity and impact of this villain who embodies evil, but paradoxically taught himself, and us, the true meaning of family. His imposing presence, his quirky humor, and his redemptive journey cemented him as one of the most beloved and respected villains in animation, a true landmark in the history of anti-heroes. He combines exaggerated villainy with humor and a growing heart, making us laugh and feel. This blend of evil with good-heartedness is powerful, and it's why so many fans identify with and root for him.
I'm having a bad day. It's about
While Gru is loved for his redemption arc, Smiler doesn't receive the same treatment. Smiler, from the Emoji Movie, is easily one of the most criticized villains in animation, and it's not hard to understand why. Unfortunately, this character quickly became one of the most hated by fans, not for her effectiveness in evil, but due to a series of narrative flaws that make her unsatisfying. This negative perception is amplified by the overall reception of the film, which was widely criticized, holding a very low approval rating, around 6% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a score of 12/100 on Metacritic, being considered an overwhelming aversion. This suggests that the weak villain development is a symptom of bigger problems within the film. At her core, she is a character who, despite her leadership position, fails to justify her actions, generating more frustration than any other emotion. Smiler is the leader of Textopolis, the city of emojis inside Alex's smartphone. Her motivation for villainy, though presented as the maintenance of order, is deeply ambiguous and poorly explained. She declares Gene, the protagonist, a malfunction for his ability to express multiple emotions and orders his deletion.
That's because we're setting you up with our best antivirus bots.
So they're gonna fix me?
Actually, delete you. But yes!
The film fails to convincingly explain why deletion is the only solution, rather than re-education, which makes her actions seem disproportionate and nonsensical. Some argue that she's trying to protect her world from destruction, but this reasoning isn't well communicated, undermining any empathy the audience might have had. The real problem arises when Smiler, who initially preaches acceptance with the phrase "be yourself," acts with total hypocrisy, labeling Gene a malfunction because he doesn't fit the mold.
Hurt.
The most important thing I can tell you is to just be yourself. I was made to be happy, so I am always smiling.
This contradiction in her character is glaring and undermines her credibility. She demands that all emojis follow a single expression and punishes anyone who strays from it, which many see as an authoritarian and negative stance. Her portrayal as a villain is seen as stereotypical and cliché, a constant smile, vanity, and a desire for absolute control, without the depth needed to make her memorable or truly threatening. This contributes to the perception that she's a standard villain, lacking the complexity that could elevate her. Additionally, the film's narrative damages the credibility of her arc. Many viewers feel that Gene, the protagonist, causes most of the chaos due to his flaws, yet he's still treated as the hero, while Smiler remains the relentless antagonist. This role reversal generates resentment and raises questions about the story's internal logic. Smiler's defeat, in turn, is often seen as futile or without real impact, which further diminishes the weight of her villainy for many.
Oh no! What did you do to my beautiful ball? Oh my...
She represents the frustration of wasted potential, an antagonist who gets lost in the shadows of flawed logic and predictable execution. Her lack of depth and the inconsistency of her actions have solidified her as one of the most hated villains in animation, not for her impactful evil, but for her unsatisfying construction. On the other hand, the Spot is somehow beloved by fans of Spider-Man across the Spider-Verse. The Spot, Dr. Jonathan Owen, the villain of spots and interdimensional portals. The Spot is a character who, despite not being a top-tier villain like Green Goblin or Venom, has carved out a special place in the hearts of fans. And not just because of his visually amazing powers. He's the embodiment of the B-list villain who earns the spotlight he deserves, obsessed with revenge and becoming a multiversal threat, which leads him to confront Miles Morales.
Destiny brought us here. You see now, don't you?
I really don't.
I am your nemesis. You are not. You miss.
His quest for power transforms him from an almost comedic figure into a cosmic terror. The Spot is a villain who, with his initially awkward demeanor and his methods of manipulating space-time, represents the rise of a forgotten character into a real threat. But what truly elevated him to beloved villain status was the boldness of the choice. Many fans enjoy seeing lesser-known villains get the spotlight. It's reminiscent of what filmmakers like James Gunn are doing today, taking lesser-known heroes and villains from the comics and turning them into central figures loved by the wider audience. The choice of the Spot, a scientist who hours after an accident with the particle collider and blames Miles for his condition, makes the conflict personal and intriguing.
I was in this collider room when you blew it up! Because of you, I lost my job, my life.
His appearance, with spots that are portals and part of his skin, and the way his powers are used, opening interdimensional portals and manipulating space-time, provide a visual spectacle that only animation could deliver. The film develops him from an almost comedic figure into a serious threat, surprising and exciting fans as they see him evolve from a goofball into a full-fledged eldritch terror. By the end, his plans to strengthen himself and cause disruptions in the multiversal continuum turn him into a worthy and personal adversary for Miles. His legacy of surprise and his representation of the forgotten villain keep him alive in fans' memories, making him an unforgettable and, yes, beloved villain. While the Spot is loved by fans, King Leonard Mudbeard is hated. King Leonard Mudbeard, the Pig King from the Angry Birds movie, is the archetype of a villain who fails to be memorable, and his one-dimensionality firmly places him in the category of the most despised villains by fans, who expected more depth and respect for the established canon of such a rich franchise. His backstory is non-existent in the movie, and his motivation is at the root of his rejection. He wants to steal the birds' eggs to eat them.
I wish we did. Enchanté. You look delicious, my dear.
Instead of seeking a complex motivation, this act of childish aggression, stealing and trying to cook eggs with chicks inside, feeds into the criticism that the villain lacks depth. His methods are sneaky. He and his assistant, Ross, arrive on Bird Island posing as peaceful explorers, bringing innovations and gifts to the birds, all while hiding an army of pigs and plotting their theft. Leonard uses distraction and the gullibility of the birds, never brute force, which makes him a relentless adversary, but one who is far from captivating. In the film, Leonard initially operates with a sense of modernity, introducing new ideas to distract the birds.
But that's not all. Throwing things just got a whole lot easier. Say hello to the slingshot!
His threat escalates as he orchestrates the planting of dynamite and the mass theft of the eggs, culminating in the destruction of Red's village, making the birds realize that Red was right. The final confrontation takes place on Piggy Island, where the eggs are about to be cooked. The battle ends with Leonard's defeat and the destruction of his city, but the scar of his actions remains. Despite his presence in the climax, Leonard is heavily criticized. His motivation is seen as extremely basic and childish. He wants the eggs for his own benefit, period. His idea of villainy is presented in a simplistic way, without the nuances that would generate empathy or deep questions about his choices. Leonard's portrayal is often caricatured, with easy jokes and exaggerated actions, making him less threatening and more annoying for many fans. His voice, for example, is criticized for sounding like a generic commercial character. The main point of rejection, however, is the inconsistency with lore and continuity. Fans complain that Leonard appears as the king of the pigs in the movie, but in previous games and animations of the franchise, this character was already different. For many of us who had the best experience with this franchise through the mobile game, this character or design change is deeply disappointing, as it directly messes with the nostalgia and established canon. The lack of explanation about who he was before, what his backstory is, or why he replaced the iconic figure of the classic King Pig creates confusion. Many feel the film messes up the established universe of the games, and that Leonard was used more for merchandising or easy engagement rather than to build a deep, memorable antagonist. This lack of complexity, his simplistic motivation, and the break with nostalgia solidify him as one of the most hated villains in the franchise. Additionally, some reviews point out that the film uses the idea of foreigners, the pigs, in a simplistic or even xenophobic way, and Leonard is at the center of this theme, which bothers more attentive fans.
We saw your island across the sea, and we thought, wonder what they're up to.
But there's no other place besides here.
Yes, there is. And we are from there. We call it Piggy Island.
Oh my God.
P-I-G-G-Y Island.
He's seen as a villain who couldn't establish himself as a deep and memorable antagonist, being just a plot device, which cements him as one of the most hated villains in animation. Leaving behind the frustration with one-dimensional villains, we now dive into one of the most charismatic and paradoxically beloved antagonists in animation, Nigel, the cockatoo from Rio. He's not just an enemy, but a theatrical figure whose story of a fallen star resonates deeply with the audience, solidifying his status as an unforgettable villain. Nigel's journey is marked by a deep personal tragedy. He was a TV star, famous and adored, only to be replaced by a younger, more attractive bird, sparking a bitter resentment and deep hatred for the pretty birds.
I had it all, a TV show, women too. I was tall, over 1'2". And then they got a pretty parakeet to fill my shoe. That's why I am so evil, why I do what I do.
This event pushed him down a path of fury and revenge, leading him to team up with animal smugglers to hunt and capture rare birds like Blue and Jewel. For Nigel, this fall from glory and public humiliation was a devastating betrayal. His frustration and wounded pride pushed him further into villainy, seeking to prove his worth and relevance. Many fans even believe he steals the show in the movie, thanks to his personality and charisma. Nigel is loved for being a worthy and formidable rival, but above all, for his extravagant and theatrical personality. His memorable design as a yellow-crested cockatoo with a damaged look and missing feathers after the accident adds layers of tragedy and humor to the character. He has a dramatic flair, almost theatrical, enjoys Shakespeare, and considers himself a fallen star, making him a villain with style. His iconic lines like, "Hello, pretty bird. What's the matter? Cockatoo got your throat?" and the song Pretty Bird help cement him in the minds of viewers. The confrontation between Nigel and Blue isn't just a physical battle. It's a clash of philosophies, where Nigel's stylish malice and wounded pride collide with Blue's resilience and fear. This ability to act as a mirror for the hero, challenging him on every level, is one of the key pillars of his appeal. His backstory deepens in Rio too. Even though he's threatening, Nigel shows vulnerability, the loss of flight, the career fall, and the humiliation. This combination of villainy and vulnerability creates a kind of love for the villain or cult villain dynamic. Fans create fanfics, wish for his redemption, and comment that they'd like to see him as the good guy, showing a deep emotional engagement. His evolution from pure antagonist to someone with understandable motivations and a touch of humor resonates with fans who appreciate villains with meaningful character arcs.
Obey. Or
Not to be. That is the question.
His iconic presence, memorable lines, and striking design have solidified him as one of the most beloved and respected villains in animation. A reminder that greatness can come from unexpected places, and that even a charismatic figure can have a fallen star story that captivates us. Nigel is loved because he's more than just the villain. He has style, history, flaws, and humor. From a charismatic and beloved villain, we now turn to one who, despite his narrative importance, has solidified his place as one of the most hated, Soto, the saber-toothed tiger from Ice Age. This villain, with his coldness and thirst for vengeance, represents a lack of nuance and depth that few fans can forgive, making him more annoying than memorable. Soto is the leader of his pack and the main antagonist of the first film. His motivation for villainy is deeply rooted in a past of loss. He hates humans because they killed part of his pack.
Isn't it nice he'll be joining us for breakfast? It wouldn't be breakfast without him, especially since his
Daddy wiped out half our pack and wears our skin to keep warm. An eye for an eye. Don't you think?
However, this tragedy is never explored in any emotional or narrative depth. This lack of development makes his motivation feel like a simplistic excuse, weakening the character. His actions in the film embody his cold nature. He manipulates Diego, his subordinate, into capturing a human baby for revenge, introducing a level of threat that some feel is too heavy for the film's family-friendly comedy tone. Soto has practically no nuance. He's cold, vengeful, and morally unambiguous, which makes him simply evil and doesn't leave room for the audience to relate or understand him on a deeper level. The film's climax, where Soto is defeated in a series of action scenes, falling under an ice wall, stalagmites, reinforces the sense that he's only there to be defeated, not to provoke any significant growth. He remains static until the end, without the redemption or development that Diego, his own subordinate, experiences. It's this lack of charisma and depth that makes him so despised. Initially, I considered putting villains like Rudy or Captain Gut in place of Soto, but Soto is such a weak villain that, in the end, I chose to include him. At least with Captain Gut, when I watched Ice Age 4 as a child, I could feel entertained and even excited by him. And Rudy, I always enjoyed Ice Age 3 because of the dinosaur exploration, so Rudy as a dinosaur was just a bonus. Soto, on the other hand, fails to be a memorable villain for any redeeming qualities. He's seen as an external obstacle who doesn't grow, cementing his place as one of the most hated villains in animation. In this sense, Soto fits into the villain doing it because he has to category, not the I'm complex type. And here's the crucial point. For a villain to be interesting, they don't need to be complex or have a redemption arc. A villain can simply be pure evil, relentless evil. But even in this, Soto fails as a villain. He's not pure and fascinating evil, but static and dull evil, which makes him more boring or annoying than memorable to the audience. Leaving behind the frustration with one-dimensional villains, we now dive into one of the most stylish and, paradoxically, beloved antagonists in animation, Vector, Victor Perkins, Gru's rival in Despicable Me. He's not just an enemy, but an eccentric figure whose combination of arrogance and clumsiness deeply resonates with audiences, solidifying his status as an unforgettable villain. Vector's journey is defined by an unrelenting quest for recognition. He's the villain who stole the Great Pyramid of Giza, injuring Gru's pride and motivating his plan to steal the moon.
Outrage in Egypt tonight as it was discovered that the Great Pyramid of Giza had been stolen and replaced by a giant inflatable replica.
However, alongside his boundless ambition grew a need to prove himself to his father, the president of the Bank of Evil. For Vector, this quest for attention and validation, despite being rich and talented, humanizes him. Many fans can relate to someone who has to fight for attention, making his story more engaging than that of a generic villain. Vector is loved for being a worthy and formidable rival, but most of all, for his memorable style and eccentric personality. His look is exaggerated and stands out, an orange and white tracksuit, bowl-cut hair, and oversized glasses. His catchphrase, "I'm a force of crime with both direction and magnitude." Oh yeah! It captures his cartoonish and over-the-top style, creating a visually iconic character. He's not just the typical evil villain. He blends arrogance, technology, childishness, and unchecked ambition. He has absurd gadgets and inventions, like the squid launcher and the piranha gun, which provoke laughter. This combination of a competent villain, with high-tech gadgets, and a clumsy villain whose plans often go awry and who engages in physical humor, makes him endearingly imperfect.
Vector! That's me, because I'm committing crimes with both direction and magnitude. Oh yeah! Check out my new weapon. Piranha gun! Oh yes! Fires live piranhas. Ever seen one before? No, you haven't. I invented it. Do you want a demonstration? Oh! Ah! It's so difficult sometimes to get the point.
The clash between Gru and Vector is not just a battle of villains, it's a contest of styles, where Vector's technological arrogance collides with Gru's ambition and newfound heart. This ability to mirror the hero, challenging him on all levels and setting the stage for Gru's journey, is one of the pillars of Vector's appeal. He's not just a plot device, he drives the story forward, introducing memorable scenes, the kidnapping, the high-tech fortress, the pyramid heist, that elevate the movie. As the franchise's first major antagonist, he left a lasting mark and represents a classic part of the series for fans. His ability to fail spectacularly with style is what makes him relatable to audiences of all ages. He competes with the protagonist, but his failures are funny, never too scary or cruel. The fact that he ends up literally stuck on the moon is so absurd that it's become part of his character's charm. This evolution, from a pure antagonist to someone with relatable motivations and a touch of humor, resonates with fans who appreciate villains with style and flaws. His iconic presence, memorable lines, and striking design have solidified him as one of the most loved and respected villains in animation. A reminder that greatness can come from unexpected places, and even an eccentric villain can captivate us. Vector is loved because he's more than just the villain. He has style, history, flaws, and humor. From an eccentric and beloved villain, we now move to one who, despite his menacing appearance, has become one of the most hated, Mandrake, the leader of the Boggans in Epic, the Hidden Kingdom. This villain, with his thirst for decay and destruction, embodies a lack of depth and the disappointment of an unfulfilled narrative promise, making him more generic than epic. Mandrake is the main antagonist of the film, leading the decay creatures who seek to destroy the Leafman's kingdom. His motivation, while rooted in revenge for the death of his son, Dagda, is insufficiently explored in the movie. To many viewers, he is just evil for the sake of it, or abstractly evil, which makes him too generic and lacking the emotional weight one would expect from a villain in an adventure of this kind. His actions in the film personify destruction. He attacks Queen Tara, forcing her to initiate the succession process, and chases MK and the Leafmen to prevent the seed symbol herb from ensuring the continuity of life in the kingdom. Mandrake has impressive visual powers of decay and controls dark creatures, but the emotional depth or complexity one would expect from a standout antagonist simply isn't there to match the design. What fuels the hatred for Mandrake even more is the lack of nuance and the weight of expectation. The film's title promises an epic, which naturally demands a villain to match. However, Mandrake is seen as a villain just because, with no layers to his character, which weakens his dynamic with the heroes. This lack of depth makes it hard for the audience to feel genuinely threatened or emotionally engaged in the battle against him. Additionally, the constant presence of comedic and relief scenes, like those involving the slugs Mub and Grub, dilute the tension of the threat Mandrake is supposed to represent, making him lose some of his gravity.
Ugly says what?
What?
Nothing.
Thus, Mandrake suffers from the weight of expectation and his caricatured execution. He's a villain who works visually but fails narratively, cementing his position as one of the most hated villains in animation. He is an antagonist lost in the shadow of a promised epic, failing to evoke any strong emotion other than disappointment. Leaving behind the frustration with one-dimensional villains, we now dive into one of the most charismatic and paradoxically beloved antagonists in animation, Scar, the envious lion from The Lion King. He transcends the figure of the villain just because he's evil, presenting a depth of envy and a brutal elegance that make him unforgettable and, to many, fascinating. Scar's story is a web of ambition, envy, and wounded pride. As the brother of King Mufasa, he developed a deep hatred for feeling overlooked and unworthy of the throne.
Well, I was first in line until the little hairball was born.
The hairball is my son, and you're future king.
Oh, I shall practice my curtsy.
Don't turn your back on me, Scar.
Oh, no, Mufasa. Perhaps you shouldn't turn your back on me.
This motivation, a mix of jealousy, ambition, and a misguided attempt to control his destiny, generates a dark empathy in the audience, who can understand the roots of his darkness. This family betrayal dynamic and thirst for power is why the film is often compared to the Shakespearean tragedy Hamlet, where the uncle, Claudius, murders his brother, King Hamlet, to usurp the throne. This classical inspiration lends Scar a depth and symbolism that elevate him. Scar returns with a devastating plan, the death of Mufasa, determined to claim the throne and rule the Pride Lands. His actions are relentless. He manipulates Simba, kills his brother, and takes power, leading the kingdom into decay.
Long live the king.
What makes Scar so beloved is how he becomes a catalyst for Simba's growth. The confrontation between them is not just physical, it's an ideological and emotional battle. Scar represents Simba's traumatic past, the guilt of losing his father. He forces Simba to confront his origins and find inner peace, turning guilt into strength. This hero-villain dynamic is rich because Scar acts as a mirror for Simba, a foe that challenges him to transcend guilt and embrace responsibility. Beyond his narrative depth, Scar is visually striking and charismatic. His design, with the scar, darker fur, expressive eyes, and the sophisticated sardonic voice of Jeremy Irons, creates a memorable aesthetic. He commits atrocities, but he does so with strategy and cold calculation, never aimlessly. His downfall is not a simple triumph of good over evil. It's the result of his refusal to abandon ambition, culminating in his brutal and iconic death, being devoured by the hyenas he betrayed. Scar is a villain who, due to his complexity, his crucial role in the hero's development, and his iconic presence, solidifies himself as one of the most beloved and respected villains in animation. For many, he is even considered one of the greatest villains of all time.